All right, welcome back for another episode of Carnivore Trades. Today is another episode in the Master Trader series. Today's guest is a returning guest. His name is Chartman Dan from the Chart Guys. We've had him on here before, and he is an excellent chartist, excellent technical trader. He's doing a great job lately of covering the cannabis sector, which is kind of the focus of today's video: how to trade, how to make money in this market, in this hype sector, and how to make money in hype sectors in general. So, without further ado, Chartman Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back. How are you doing?
Awesome. Glad to have you back. So, yeah, let's get right into it. So, marijuana stocks right now, obviously, definitely a hot sector. Looking at some of the charts here, kind of a little bit of a vertical move, although they did put in a low earlier in 2023, kind of had like a little pseudo double bottom, and now really ripping higher here. So, but kind of the background though, I played some of these stocks before in the past. Last time I really was interested in them was in 2020. We had a general election year there as well. I made some decent money on, some of the Canadian players. What kind of the thought process, they're heavily shorted, and going into election year, you don't want to risk a blue wave. You don't want to risk any sort of news coming down the pipeline. And they did get a pretty good pop towards the election. I think I made pretty good gains on some of those call options I had. But they came right back down like they always do. And they were kind of heartbreakers. So, and ever since then, every pop has been a short. And even going back to 2018 before that. So what kind of things are different now? Obviously, we are in an election year. They are heavily shorted. I always knew that these stocks would come back and they would have a run. But what makes the backdrop a little bit different now as opposed to previous cycles?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, election year is the foundation, just because I've been trading the sector for 13 years, and every time there's an election year, I know, okay, towards the end of the summer is when I start focusing on the sector. This year, it's a bit earlier this time around. And really it's because of the potential for, and it's always potential until we get something concrete, but the potential for some significant fundamental changes where we get the HHS recommending that the DEA reschedule cannabis. And if that were to happen, that would be something that we can point to and say, this is a significant change that benefits cannabis stocks and cannabis, the movement in general. And, Biden has done some pardons, but these are just headlines. They're not actually doing anything, but rescheduling would definitely actually do something. So over the last, we can say maybe 4 months, the probabilities have shifted to favor rescheduling as we just get more and more word that it's looking to take place, and Biden definitely wanting that on his resume, so to speak, heading into the election. So it has people excited again, but again, we need the actual concrete fundamental change to take place this time.
Right. So, and another thing too is I think another thing that could play into it too, a lot of people aren't really thinking about, is tax revenue. So with interest rates higher right now, the government's starved for tax revenue. They need a way to generate that. I mean, look what happened with sports betting. You can't turn on a football game, basketball game without seeing Sportsbook, DraftKings, and I think they're kind of going that way. And you're seeing, that on the ballot each and every year. It's on a ballot for another state for another declassification or some form of decriminalization. So but you're right. Until we get the concrete at the federal level, where it's kind of a blanket, it still could be speculative. But at the same time, speculative, right, could be enough to where, hey, if you're a hedge fund, you might want to get literally hedge and maybe cover, or start thinking about that. So there's still money to be made, either way, as long as you're able to trade in and out of it, right?
Yeah, there's been plenty of run-ups in this sector over the last decade that are just based on excitement. And as you mentioned, in 2020, that's what that was. I mean, we did have a blue wave, and everybody said, all right, we now have the government structure that's going to lead to cannabis laws changing. And it just didn't. And it was, oh my God, nothing's changing. And so we just slow bled for 2 years as everybody realized, wow, nothing's going to change, even though we had the Democrats have the president, the House, the Senate, and still nothing is changing. That just showed me, this is systemic. This is the system. It's not red or blue. It's not that, party line game. So yeah, we need the concrete change. We've had the concrete changes on the state levels, which is why we have had some runs in the past. I had a really good year in 2000. I forget, it was 13 or 14 when Washington and Colorado legalized. But yeah, we need the federal change. That is the headline. that everybody's waiting on.
All right. So let's take a look here at some charts. So you've been saying, see, I watched one of your videos the other day. You were saying essentially MSOS, I believe, hasn't, I believe it's now above monthly EMA 12 for the first time. So
Yeah.
that's a evidence here that there is potentially, right, a concrete bottom, right? The charts are telling us that somebody believes that there's something more here. So maybe that could lead to, um, something concrete down the pipe. But let's see what the charts are saying and why you think there may be a macro low in place here.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, there's a couple of things where we could say this is the first time this has happened. And for MSOS, we closed over monthly EMA 12 resistance, which is this red line. We rejected, 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 finally closed above it in January, first time ever. It's the first monthly uptrend that this ETF has ever seen as far as a higher low and a higher high. So, I started to get interested back when we had the HHS recommendation to the DEA. I said I think the long-term bottom is in because of the volume. The volume was telling me, this looks like a longer-term bottom. And then, of course, once we break that high, that confirms to me, yeah, a longer-term bottom is being set right now. And so, this is gaining the attention. I'm sure you're aware that on Twitter, there's a lot more interest in this sector, of course, because of the rumors, but there's a lot of interest from technical traders who are getting interested in this sector for the first time. The headlines help, but it is technically attracting traders as well. So we have the scenario lining up where you've got technicals are saying bullish, the fundamentals and the potential are saying bullish. And so again, it's just we need that. We just need to not get our hearts broken this time. And so as you mentioned, things to do in a hype sector, it's preserve your capital and look for entries on dips during consolidation. And hopefully this is the kind of move where, the election's in November. That's what we've got 9 months. That's a long time. If the broader market stays as strong as it has been, we have the potential to be in, monthly, weekly, daily uptrends for quite some time in 2024. And so that's the hope for everybody that's bullish in the sector.
Yeah, and even if the market has a corrective period, it's does it maintain, like you said, the monthly EMA 12, does it maintain a bullish structure? If that happens, it could provide us with a really good buying opportunity in cannabis, maybe even in the summer, as it cools off, as we get close to that election starts ramping up, those are the things we'll definitely look for. With that said, we'll definitely get into a hype sector strategy, but I want to talk about what are some of the best so obviously the Canada stocks are kind of languishing right now, but what are the best stocks obviously to play? Everyone knows MSOS, but what are the safest, some of the more speculative? You have any names that kind of stand out there?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, MSOS is the ETF, is the standard, and that's, what I trade majority if I'm trading US. And that's just because of the mechanics, OTC, these individual names that are traded on the OTC. My trading style is, as a day trader, I'm market buying and selling decent positions. It's all relative, but in terms of, these names, they're large positions because, if I market order a position size that I'm used to taking, it takes sometimes 20, 30 seconds to fill. And it just, I market by Tesla, it fills instantly. I market by any of these individual names and it's partial, 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 partial. And it just takes a really long time to fill. And it's not what I'm used to. I'm used to saying, I want in right now, give me my shares, I'm in. And so, you have to take that into account when you determine which of these names you're looking at. But it's nice to break it down into tier one. Well, I mean, you break it down into the borders. You got US names and you got Canada names. When you're on the US side, you got tier one, tier two, tier three, just in terms of, size, market dominance, market cap. And so right now, the names that have been standing out the most are Trulieve, TCNNF. That's been leading this move up because of a headline increasing the probabilities that we're going to get a recreational vote in Florida in November, which is another potential catalyst in terms of the stars aligning for some positives that can take place all at once. And then Green Thumb, GTBIF, is another major name. It hasn't really been doing a whole lot, and that's because Trulieve has stolen its thunder over the past 3 weeks, so to speak, as it's garnered the attention. And then the other big three, I view it as the big three right now. It's Curaleaf, CURLF, and it's been going up, but again, it's clearly Trulieve has been going up the most over the last couple of weeks. So those are the three major companies Aside from that, we've got, some smaller names, CRLBF, TSNDF, VRNOF, AYW. I always get that one wrong. AYWR. Nope.
Those OTCs always.
Yeah, it ends in an F. We know that much.
Yeah.
ARYWF. Come on. ARWYF. There. Nope.
There it is.
No, that's not it.
Nope.
Ascend. Let's just go with the name of the company.
Yeah.
We'll get there. Ascend Wellness. Anyways, I'm falling on my face here in terms of this ticker.
Oh,
No, it's not. It
looks like a TS. Is that?
There it is.
There it is.
AYR Wellness. It's not Ascend. Okay.
Okay.
AYRWF. So yeah, these are the smaller cap names. And if you're trading, tier 2, tier 3 names, it's higher risk, higher reward, which means, if let's just say, I'm young, I'm 22, I'm not, but let's say I am. And, I want to be aggressive and, I don't have a lot of debt and I want to hit it big this cycle. I'm focusing on the lower cap names because percentage wise, when we're bearish, they drop harder. When we're bullish, they go up harder in terms of percentage moves because they're more thinly traded. And that's one of the benefits of illiquid trading on the OTC is when everybody's trying to get through the door at the same time, these names really move. And so, if you get a headline, these smaller names move significantly. But, say you're 64 and you got a mortgage and a family and you want some exposure, but, you don't want, as much maximum risk, then you're just going with MSOS or maybe, a couple of these leaders. So
Trulieve,
yeah, it really is dependent on your personal financial situation and what your goals are in terms of, what kind of exposure you want to this sector.
With Trulieve, is there any sort of talk about uplisting right now?
Everybody's looking towards uplisting, but it's just not on the table in terms of possibilities. Some of these names have uplisted in Canada, which doesn't do a ton in my opinion.
Really,
yeah, it doesn't move the needle much. But the uplisting in the US will be key for those of us that were trading Canadian names in 2017, 2018. When they uplisted, their dollar volume did something absurd, like 10x in terms of the amount of dollar volume.
Because the hedge funds, managed money can get in. I even on MSOS, I day traded that this morning, and I was like, wow, this is slow. And I actually sold it a little bit earlier than I would have just because I didn't want to get stuck in it. But yeah, and that's an ETF too. So some of these, when you get that uplisting though, it helps just so much. Like you were saying earlier, like you want to fill on Tesla, just boom, and it's there. As soon as you click the button. So that's obviously a huge key. I think if that happens, that would certainly legitimize things.
Yeah, and that's one of the things where, whether it's safe banking or maybe descheduling opens a door or rescheduling opens a door for potential uplisting, that is one of the, if I had to lay major catalysts, it's federal change, Florida recreational, potential uplisting, and then merger acquisitions once things open up and some other companies try and get a piece of the pie.
Yeah, I would say here, just from experience too, living in Florida, it's going to get passed. I think it's basically legal here already. They already have like dispensaries everywhere. They have Delta 8 everywhere. It's been slowly kind of moving in, and I think it's going to be a big deal. So definitely something to look forward to. As far as some of the other stocks, do you think perhaps, the Canada plays could be a laggard bull? Because they've been languishing right now, and maybe it's worth, if you're speculative, hey, like let me pick up a leap option on Aurora Cannabis or Tilray, and just pretend the money's gone. And if it 10x's, it 10x's.
Yeah, it's worth paying attention to. Absolutely. Because we've seen it many times. And even the HHS reaction, we saw, if we go to MSOS, the HHS initial reaction, we ran pretty much 100%. And, that was, let's see, August 30th is when that move started, and it just took off straight up. And if you look at these Canadian names, let's see, August, actually CGC is a better example. CGC back on August 30th, it benefited, but it didn't really get its move going until, almost a week later. Like, okay, we're going up, but then the short squeeze happened in a span of 2 days, essentially.
Right.
And so as it was a laggard. Again,
and it hasn't done anything since then.
Right. And so, again, just to give some numbers here, in that 2 day span, we went up about 135%. And that move started on September 8th. And at that point in time, on September 8th, that's what MSOS is doing this. So MSOS starts trading sideways. CGC gets a short squeeze for 135%. So that's why people are interested in these names as laggards, as they should be. My mindset is, I don't want to enter into weakness. Give me a reason. Show me some bullish action. Show me some volume, some momentum, break some resistance. I don't need to nail the bottom. MSOS, you didn't need to nail the first 20% of the move. If you get the next 50%, that's perfectly fine. That's my mindset. And so I'm not going to buy the weaker names while they're weak. I'm going to watch them. I'm going to set, volume alerts or price alerts, but they have to earn my capital. And right now, CGC and TLRY are not. One name on the Canadian side that did earn my capital is OGI. And that was just because of this weekly setup where it was clear resistance level into a bull flag. One of the psychedelic names that I've been tracking, CMPS, did this exact same thing. And so I was watching this saying, all right, I just watched this happen. And so I did grab a position in this name because, you look at the weekly chart, it's clearly benefiting. It's been going up the last couple of months.
Uptrend there. Yep.
And CGC is a downtrend. TLRY is a downtrend. So big difference. And it's a very small cap name. So I have to use lower capital. My stop loss is a lot further away. So it's a smaller position size, but that is my exposure to a Canadian stock right now. And we'll see how long it continues to earn my capital in terms of me, holding that position.
You took what I was going to say later, but we'll just talk about it now. Psychedelic stocks, could they be, is there something to that as well? Could they be a residual effect of a HHS, deschedulization or just we're in a general election year, is there something that's going on there that we could see just from speculative, speculative sense?
It's the same thing in the sense that if you're looking at the stock market as a whole, where's the most risk and reward, the highest volatile sectors, it's cannabis and psychedelic, hands down. Maybe you have some crypto miners, crypto stocks are in there, but just in terms of any sector that has to do with laws, that's where, there's a lot of, especially laws changing, that's where there's a lot of opportunity. And so, CMPS just came off an all-time low a couple of months ago. But this is that same move that I was talking about where we had resistance into the bull flag, into the breakout. And so we are currently seeing it back testing previous resistance, now trying to hold as support here. You can see this zone where, we rejected, and now we're trying to back test and hold it. And so if we can do that, that's a good sign. As far as the fundamentals, I expect if cannabis stocks perform well, it's going to help psychedelics and vice versa because they're in the same thread. But I'm not, the go-to for fundamentals. But there is the potential that in February here, the FDA is going to determine whether they're willing to accept an application for therapy uses for MDMA. And so that would be a major step. If MDMA, gets granted it's two steps. You got to accept the application and then you got to approve it. So as we know, anything to do with the government is just a snail's pace. That's the way it goes. But there are some
go
potential,
through 10 different people to get
everything that's wrong with our U.S. political system. It's on full display in these sectors. But that's a potential catalyst to be watching for. And the same thing, there's such low volume and low liquidity in these stocks that if you get, I call it a sexy headline. If it's a headline that gets average Joe's attention and average Joe says, hey, maybe I can make money off of that, that's the kind of Wall Street bets type of headline that gets everybody interested. You look at these things like safe banking, that's not a sexy headline. People that are following the sector every day, that's great, but my friends aren't going to be talking about safe banking. They'll be talking about legalization. They'll be talking about maybe rescheduling. I doubt it, but you need those big attention grabbers. And I'm seeing in my analytics in terms of content creation that it's certainly picking up in this sector, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where you get people writing articles about it, and then they get more views and shares, and so they keep writing articles about it, and more people get interested and see the headlines, and that's building over the last couple of months. And the question is, can we get that concrete headline to give us another push forward?
Yeah, and another thing, just to go back to uplisting again for a second, when you get uplisted, that also opens the door for call options, which is something that retail loves, and market makers too. So that's a whole nother game there where you get into gamma squeezing when hype gets hype, buying begets buying. So it's a whole nother, can of worms there when you get options involved.
Yeah, right now MSOS has options, but very, illiquid, same thing.
Yeah.
It's not a market for traders at the moment. But yeah, that would definitely get things interesting for sure. There's been plenty of gamma squeezes ever since GameStop, and it's always something to behold when that happens. I mean, Tilray had one. Tilray, because it's uplisted, it had options. We ran to 300 back in the day. And that was just insanity. I mean, it made no sense. The market cap made no sense. The fundamentals made no sense. And it was just, okay, here's the game of flashing numbers.
Just
And
weaponizing those market makers.
exactly.
Yeah. So let's just shift gears a little bit here. So what's kind of like the strategy here for playing these if somebody wants to, like, obviously there you can kind of trade in and out of them a little bit. I know you're covering that pretty often, following the day-to-day movement, but is there somebody who says, hey, I want to just build like a core position in some of these and then kind of hold them into the election? What's kind of the strategy here that you might look to hopefully make a big gain out of a hype sector?
So I know for me, as you mentioned, trading in and out, I like to do, I do this in crypto. I do this in things where I have, my longer term position, and then in a different account, I've got my trading positions. And that's very important to separate psychologically. And, it helps with, I call it my anti-FOMO position. If I'm not touching it and I've got this exposure, if I miss a move up or I miss a headline or whatever, I'm all right. I'm making money. It's my anti-FOMO position. And same thing, if we're going to see a big drawdown, I can short it in my day trading account and offset some of that. So I highly suggest separating if you do plan on trading. But for me, it's buying consolidation. And as you mentioned, the weekly chart right now for MSOS has a higher low every single week for the last 7 weeks. And we will eventually see weekly consolidation, which means we will pull back 10 to 20% from the high, and we'll look for a weekly higher low because that's going to be the most likely scenario. We have a ton of space for a weekly higher low to form. So I already know, I don't know what level it's going to be at. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know I will be looking to buy weekly higher lows in the cannabis sector at some point in the next, month or two, whenever this shapes up. And so, if you're a really patient bull, you're waiting for weekly consolidation. If you're a more aggressive bull, you're buying on, hourly consolidation or daily consolidation. And my strategy, I often talk about back burners, which is just in a trending strong market, it's the first time you hit oversold. And so, MSOS on its move up, the first time we hit 5-minute oversold, a number of times on the way up was your best time to buy. And so what I'm looking for next is when we get daily consolidation, I'm watching for first hourly oversold conditions, and I'll play that bounce.
Right.
And my style is, you get to hourly oversold, I scale in maybe 1 or 2 positions, the bounce gets underway, I scale out a bit of the position, stick a stop under that low, and that either marks a longer term higher low, which it does very often in strong trending markets, or it doesn't, and I stop out, break even or low risk, and then look to add at a different spot and, reassess the situation. But it's entries during consolidation if you are looking to build position and add to position that you already have.
Yeah. So generally, and it's been in a very, I mean, it's pretty much vertical at this point. So, we know that a consolidation is coming at some point. I guess what's kind of so we'll talk a little bit about this. Like is there any things you do to, outside of just having a core position, to like avoid FOMO or avoid chasing when something is this vertical?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about shorter term levels. And, you got to zoom in for that, obviously. I have the hourly chart up right now. And so we can just clearly see here, we dropped down and bounced off 979 and then 978 and then 981 in extended hours. And so clearly this is a base of support. that is worth paying attention to. And we can make plays off of that level and say, well, I look at the daily chart, I don't want to buy now, and then we pull back 20%. Well, that's why we use stop losses. So, if I can get an entry at 990 and stick my stop at 975 under the support zone, then I'm, in full control of my risk. And I know exactly how much I'll lose if I stop out. And just one thing to note is, for me right now, I'm saying 90% chance we get rescheduled, but you have to have a worst case scenario game plan. Whenever you're in any market, any trade, worst case scenario game plan. I would, it's not unheard of that the DEA would do something extremely hypocritical because they've been doing it for 60 years. So I don't think it's going to happen, but you better believe that I'm not going to be shocked if the DEA were to either drag their feet for months and not say anything, or, come out and say, disappoint the market, essentially. So I give it a 10% chance, but that's enough of a percent chance that, you got to be prepared where if that were to come out, if a negative headline were to come out, we would gap down significantly, and that can skip your stop losses. So anytime I'm day trading, my position sizes are much larger because I have complete control. There's no gaps, versus swing trading where there is the overnight headline risk. My position sizes will be a little bit smaller. And so, often you'll see on Twitter, a lot of people saying, who's selling right now? Like with this headline? Well, I mean, me, because, I've got my position here. And if I'm, market buying yesterday we get a rumor like, oh, potentially this week, the government's going to say something about cannabis. So if I can market buy, $100,000 at 1020, and if I'm up $4,000 in 5 minutes, I'm selling half that position and then getting risk free because I've got my core. This is my now aggressive add-on position. And so I have no problem selling that, for what some people would consider small percentage gains. And so just be aware that, as a professional trader, those are the people that are buying and selling on these kinds of moves. I got my core, but I'm going to trade around it when opportunity presents itself.
Right. It's funny. People act like they're the only ones trading. I mean, when I'm trading with a ton of leverage and, I'm in the money on something and it's like almost 4 o'clock, I'm just going to, cut it. It's, who's selling? Well, day traders, people on margin, there's more than one market participant or more than one type of market participant. So I guess, so you could either in this situation, you could just wait for weekly consolidation. It'll come. Or you can, if you really have to be in, just do what Dan says and play with a stop loss off of local support, maybe hourly support, 4-hour support, something of that nature. And, if you get stopped out, you could just look for a lower entry or look for that. Maybe now that's the start of weekly consolidation.
Partial positions. There's a mindset of newer people in market where you're either in or out. And I cannot stress enough, ditch that mindset. You don't have to be all in or all out. If you don't want to miss a headline and you think it's coming in the next couple of weeks, enter a third of the capital. That's your anti-FOMO position now. Save a third of your capital for daily consolidation. Save a third of your capital for weekly consolidation. There are many different ways to break up your capital to allow for maneuverability. And my mindset when I'm doing partial positions is, say we're running up and I sell a third of my position and we keep running. I can say, great, my net worth is going up. I've got 2/3 of my position still profiting. If I sell a third and we pull back, great, I've got capital to buy the dip. I locked in some profit. And a lot of people do the exact opposite with their brain. And it's literally just a choice of how we think about a situation where they sell a third, it keeps going up. They're negative. Oh man, I shouldn't have sold. What an idiot. I could have this much money. Or they sell a third and it drops. Oh, what an idiot. I could have sold all of it and I would have held this money. You're never going to nail tops and bottoms. You will always have a reason to be down on yourself and to think you did something wrong if that's your negative mindset. So I can't stress enough, get out of that. Look on the bright side. Be positive about, we want to learn from our mistakes, absolutely, but we don't want to beat ourselves up because this is not a game where you nail tops and bottoms and there's no such thing as perfection. I lose, as a day trader where I'm taking, maybe 8 trades a day, 6 trades a day, whatever, I'm losing every day. I'm taking a small loss almost every single day that I play this game. And if I were to get down on myself about that, I would not be a full-time trader.
Right. It would spiral out and Yeah. Well, I stress the same thing to my traders all the time. Leave guys, leave runners, take half off here, take 70% off here, leave runners. You know, if you can make 10 points a day on the ES average, you're a millionaire. Like you don't, you don't need to be hitting home runs every day. You know, that stuff adds up. So um yeah, I agree completely. Position sizing is something that really needs to be emphasized.
And
Um
it requires trial and error. You know, a lot of
yeah,
people, again, everybody's personal financial situation is different with how aggressive they're going to be, but you got to do trial and error of, determining what is a good position size. I'll sometimes jump on a new stock that I haven't traded in a while and I'll watch it for a bit. I call it dating. I want to date the stock and get to know it a bit. And I'll watch its bid and ask spread. It'll be really wide. Now, recently SMCI, this insane semiconductor runner, it takes a little bit to get used to. Like, okay, this is a wider bid and ask spread. I can't trade it exactly the same way. I have to make some adjustments. I have to size down a little bit. And market orders, there's a lot more slippage. So you have to,
yeah.
feel things out.
Especially when it's moving about 100 points in a day, like it
Just
is
to
now.
pull that up.
You
Yeah,
know, you
it's
talked about, I don't want to get too derailed here, but you
yeah.
talked about a while ago how amazing it is that NVIDIA is moving as much as it is per day. And we just recently had a 20% move in Meta, uh, which is $1 trillion company. And I think it kind of makes sense though, because if you look at the rest of the market, look at the Russell, if the market's going up, the money's got to go somewhere. So all that money that would be going in other places is just going into NVIDIA and making it move $200 billion in 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's
It's
definitely, I
just
mean, these as a lot of bears have been highlighting, in my opinion, incorrectly, in the sense that, I've been hearing for a year and a half at this point. All the money, it's just 7 stocks holding up the market. Okay, maybe, but it's going up. It's
yeah,
the gains in my account
until
aren't
that
fake.
stops. Yeah,
They're
yeah,
still real. So
right.
and there is periods of rotation where the Magnificent Seven will chill out and then the Russell gets a pop. But it's worth paying attention to. But it's a different market. The market dynamics change over time. As the market dynamics, the most significant change has been these zero expiration options being introduced to the market, and it just changes the game. And so social media changed the game, Twitter changed the trading game, Wall Street bets changed the
100%.
game. So you
Yeah,
have to stay agile and adjust, because just like the brokers that were on the floor screaming at each other, a bunch of them went extinct when the computers came around because they did not adapt. The market is constantly adapting with technology and changing, and you have to adjust with it and stay open to that. If you don't, you'll go extinct.
100%. I've been learning, the 0 day options. I know the gamma and I understand how that works now. Why? Because it dominates the feeds now. And I'm not saying I'm an expert on being a vol quant, but I understand where the gamma is, where the popular strikes are. Why? Because I trade the stuff every day. Adaptation is important. Before we get too sidetracked, though, I do want to touch on broad markets at the end really quick, but we'll finish out with cannabis here. I just want to talk about hype sector psychology really quick. How much, and we'll talk about devil's advocate, which you talked about recently, but how do we know when a market's going vertical, there's still time on the clock? Is it still healthy versus, okay, it's starting to get to dangerous euphoria here?
So I love simplicity. Trading is not simple, but we can make simple statements. And so I'll look at something and say, just I look at MSOS and say, if daily EMA 12 is support, the bulls don't have anything to worry about. And so we have now been holding this level for weeks, and it's just your guide. It's like a bumper, when you're bowling and you're not any good, you put up the bumpers over the gutters. This is your guide, and this is your safety net, and so to speak. And I can say that there is no red flag for the bulls if daily EMA 12 is support. There's many different ways to make a statement. TCNNF, there are no red flags if we set a high or low every single day. And we've been doing that now 13 days in a row. So, okay, when that pattern breaks, when my simple statement is no longer true, then we know things are shifting. Things are shifting in the short term. Maybe weekly consolidation is starting to shape up. But until that thing shifts, nothing changes. And so, you can look at weekly, I mean, just uranium sector. This is one of their ETFs. I've been watching this for over a year, just the weekly EMA 12. It just holds and holds and holds. Nothing has changed over the last 6 months because weekly EMA 12 is support, and we're going to go up as long as that is support. When we lose it, we know to step back, reassess, things are changing. But until that happens, make those simple statements and establish some guidelines for full bull control.
And is there a like strategy too for scaling out? Like if we're, if we're going vertical for X amount of days or X amount of weeks, is there something, okay, is there a signal that says, okay, like this is getting very, very euphoric and, we could be expecting a reversal. I'm not saying we're thinking a reversal is coming, but we could expect a big one at any time.
Yeah, gaps. I use gaps a lot with my trading. And as a generalization, gaps up are for selling and gap down are for buying. Very generalized. But
Yeah.
again, this is the HHS reaction where we went straight up and I was selling my core long-term position into this move. And it's the gap up days. Look at this gap up, pull back, gap up, marked the top. Those were the only two gap ups on the entire move up. And so, I look at TCNNF today and it gapped up for the first time on this entire run. And I'm saying if there's anywhere that there's going to be a temporary top, gap up makes me pay extra attention. The chip that I just mentioned, SMCI chip stock, every day where we have had a decent bearish day trade has been gap up opens. Market makers use them to help dictate some moves. And so when things get going, in 2018 Canada, our chat room, the play was you sell the gap up open, you then rebuy it on 5-minute oversold conditions. And we would do that. It was an ATM machine. We would do it time and time and time again. And it was like, this is too easy. Like this, it was dumbfounding how many times it would work. And so, this is obviously a strong move that we have going, but it's not euphoria. Euphoria is trying to build here. If we get a headline right now, we're going to start shooting up and we're going to start gapping up. And I will look to exit partial positions on, again, same thing. You gap up, I sell a partial position. We then see hourly consolidation. I know an hourly higher low is most likely. I can reload that position 5% cheaper. And so again, if you're newer to trading your first year or two, you shouldn't have that expectation on yourself to be able to navigate. You have to watch it play out. You mentioned just a moment ago, you watch the option chain. And so you're learning. There is no, I don't care what mentor you have. I don't care anything. There is no substitute in markets for observation. And that's why the people that succeed are the people that get obsessed and they spend an ungodly amount of hours in front of the computer screen because they're obsessed with it. And you cannot replicate that. So the only reason that I have gotten really good at locking in my profit and not bag holding crypto bull runs, cannabis bull runs is because I did a decade ago. I did in the penny stock days. I did watch 3D printing, hype cycle, and 95% pullback. You have to observe it happen the second time around. We've got traders, 2017, they made a bunch in crypto. They gave it all back. 2021, they killed it. The second time around is your time where you capitalize on what you learned the first time.
100%. I think we kind of covered it, but yeah, I was just going to say, towards the, and I don't think we're anywhere near euphoria in marijuana stocks. In fact, it's probably still, I'd say even in the stealth phase still, potentially. But even though they've run up quite a bit still, if you look at relatively speaking, but devil's advocate. So explain what you mean by that. Because there's going to be people who are going to turn.
It's devil's advocate just ensures, if I'm looking at a chart and I'm bullish, I say I'm putting my bear glasses on. And that just means I'm looking at this chart now as if I were a bear, because you can oftentimes see something that stands out to you that you would otherwise miss if you have a bias. And so playing devil's advocate is just that. I'm looking at it from the other direction. What's a bear thinking? What's someone who wants to short the cannabis sector? What's their mindset right now? And so when I play, when you get these moves, you get a fervor of community on social media, which is fun. It's a lot of fun when that happens. You're making money with your internet friends, but it leads to groupthink and it leads to bag holders because, one thing people will say to each other, I'm not selling, and they rally around each other, and like almost like profit taking is shamed and looked down upon. It's something that we want to avoid. And back in 2020, that was going on in the cannabis sector. There was hashtags and all this, MSO gang and all that. And it's just, my response was, I'm not going to join the MSO gang and put up that hashtag, because I've seen this story play out. And when everybody has that groupthink going on, it leads to bad things. And so you have to play devil's advocate with yourself. You don't want to psych yourself out of your thesis or your positions, but you want to, not just the goal is to take profit, and we have to click sell to take profit. And so we have to remind ourselves of that. And it's very important to, detach. It's almost like many people have a fear of missing out on money is worse than, missing out on capital gains to them is worse than losing money almost.
Yeah.
And you got to ditch that mindset. Capital preservation is number one priority. And then, of course, everything after that is try and add as much profit as you can. But devil's advocate, long story short, just avoid groupthink and these echo chambers on social media.
And scaling out and like tuning out the noise, right? Like you said the other day, like every stock I buy, every asset I buy, I intend to sell it. I'm not marrying it. The stock doesn't care about me. I'm looking to turn a profit. So at some point, especially the longer you hold something, the harder it is to get rid of it, because you get attached. But, like you said, scaling out, tuning out the noise, avoiding groupthink, keeps you on the right path in that sense.
And even just to go back to gaps, as I mentioned, on gap ups, I'm generally taking some profit. If you're looking at non-professional traders, if you're looking at social media, gap ups, people love them. Fast, quick gains. Oh my God, we're making so much. I'm doing the exact opposite. I mean, so much of trading is doing the exact opposite of what general sentiment is. When there's maximum fear, it's great to be buying. When there's maximum euphoria, you want to be taking some off the table.
Yeah, I got I beat that into my viewers' heads during September, October. It's like, guys, the market's gapping up. It's not going to bottom on a gap up. Look for the gap down. That's when we're buying. So same thing with gapping up. So awesome discussion there. Before I let you go here, I do want to get back to the broad market really quick. So we did touch on SMCI, NVIDIA, some of those names. I'm in the camp right now. The market, obviously, we're sitting at about 49.92 on the SPX. So we're just shy of 5K. Market's pulling back off the highs a little bit here. So, we'll probably get to that 5K number at some point. Everybody's kind of looking for a corrective move. I think we have had a pretty vertical move, and obviously we'll get weekly consolidation at some point here, but I'm in the camp. Like, what are your kind of signals here? I think that until you get SMCI and NVIDIA to sell and no rotation to IWM, the market's going to keep going up. Those are the two, like those two stocks are the new Tesla. That's your risk gauge. And until those stop bidding up every day, this market's probably going to hold up, or unless rotation happens to the IWM.
Exactly. That's exactly where I'm at, where exactly as you mentioned, the next time we see daily consolidation in those two names, and by daily consolidation, I mean like a couple red days in a row. I mean, give me hourly oversold conditions. When's the last time NVDA hit hourly oversold? We came somewhat close yesterday, but we haven't really done it in this entire run. And so, when we get that move down towards hourly oversold, the most important thing is, just as you mentioned, is IWM, ARKK, is growth benefiting? Because there have been multiple times on this run up, and really going all the way back to, once the bottom was hit end of 2022, multiple times big tech semiconductors lead up, they chill out, and while they chill out, IWM gets a leg up. And that's how we know everything is just fine. When these semiconductors start pulling back, if XLF and XL, I mean, healthcare is all-time highs. So many things are You know, if they're dropping with the
builders, yeah.
semiconductors, then we say, okay, this is different. But if that rotation keeps going on, there is not a thing to worry about.
Yeah, and we haven't really had follow through. It just keeps going back to semiconductors because I've noticed, I was talking about this the other day. You know, we've had a few periods where the IWM caught rotation for a couple of days, and then it just everybody's like, oh, small caps are going to catch up. Here it comes, and then it just stopped. Then the SMH is back up 2% the next day.
Yeah, there's been a few periods. There's a period, you know, here there's a solid one in December, and then last summer there was a solid catch-up move. But as you mentioned, it's definitely very limited. And if we look at IWM divided by QQQ, we could see that, you know, right now it is the weakest it has ever been compared to the NASDAQ. So it's still champion NASDAQ. It's just, you know, do we get that rotation? There's a very big difference in money leaving the market and money rotating around, which is why I'm sure, as you're aware, I'm saying if QQQ, XLF, and XLV are all at the low of the day at the same time, little light goes off in your head and says money's leaving the market. But
Right.
if QQQ's at the low of the day and XLF's at the high of the day, healthy rotation.
Yep. Alrighty, awesome stuff here. So glad to get your take on that. We'll let you go here. Before we go, where can everybody find you on social media and so on and so forth?
Yeah, we are at Chart Guys on Twitter, chartguys.com, Chart Guys on YouTube. I'd say Twitter and YouTube are the most active, but check out our website. There's a lot of free resources, free intro to TA course, all that good stuff.
Alrighty, awesome. All right, thanks again, Dan, for joining me. Everybody watching, you guys take care. You guys come find Dan on Chart Guys. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com. You guys take care, and I will see you guys all later.